Hi there, I'm Wendy McCallum, burnout and alcohol coach and wellness expert, and you're listening to Bite Size Balance, where everyday extraordinary women share their stories, expertise, and wisdom, all in the name of lifting each other up and creating a better life by design. Whether it's wellness, career, relationships, food, alcohol, mindfulness, hormones, or parenting, we talk about all things women's balance. If your life looks great on paper, but it still feels like something's missing, you're in the right place. Welcome to Bite Size Balance.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Bite Size Balance. I'm here today with Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
We are actually together this weekend. We're doing a little bit of a mini retreat, we're calling it, where we have zero agenda. So that sounds really fancy. Basically, we're just escaping our families for 24 hours.
Sit on the couch, drink a lot of decaf.
Yeah. And then when tonight rolls around, we'll pull out the alcohol-free gin and tonics and really rock it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Watch TV.
Really get crazy.
But post 50 life, folks.
This is 50.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We were just, Sarah just arrived. We're up at my cottage and Sarah just arrived a few hours ago. And we've been talking this whole time as we do. And about 4 times we've said, this should be a podcast.
Yeah.
So we finally decided to turn the record, but hit record and actually do a podcast. So we have chosen just one of the issues that we've been discussing today for this episode, although maybe we'll record another episode later today because we have a lot of stuff. But every time we talk, we think of all of these things that we think would be interesting for other people to start thinking about or talking about. Anyway, today's episode is really about the missing conversation in the workplace around women's hormones. So we want to take that concept of just generally the missing conversation and apply it to the employment context. And the reason we started talking about this is that Sarah got forwarded a copy of a report that was put out by a company called Vodaphone, which is, I've done the research now, so I can say this with authority. Vodafone is the leading tech company in Europe and Africa. And you had a client who sent that to you, Sarah? Yep. I mean, a patient, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Yeah.
She does some work in the UK and sent this on because we'd been having a conversation about how there was more talk about perimenopause in the media and how we needed it to sort of filter into every aspect of women's lives, including their workplace, because that's such a huge part of our lives. It's where we spend our days.
Right.
And all the symptoms that women experience in perimenopause and menopause that they struggle with in their home lives and in their relationships are also really present in their work lives, and often they don't get the support that they need.
Right. So Vodafone has created this amazing report that's all about the impacts of hormonal health changes for women in the workplace and what they are kind of pledging to do as an organization to effectively start having the missing conversation and also support their female employees and managers. And we just thought it was super cool. So I read through the whole report and I've made a bunch of notes about, they've also done obviously some significant research because they have a lot of statistics, really that come from their own, they're citing their own research around this. But before we get started, I mean, the reason why we think this conversation is so important is because by 2025, there will be more than 1 billion women around the world in menopause. Post-menopause, which means what? Yeah. What does that mean?
Which means that there's a lot of perimenopausal women right now.
It means there's a lot. Yeah, there's a whole lot of us out there. Yeah. Like by 2025, there will be more than 1 billion women around the world in full menopause. And so the fact that this is not being discussed in any major way in HR, in corporate policy, in employee wellness is just frankly ridiculous. Yeah. So of course, Sarah and I want to, do our part.
Change the world.
Yes, we want to change the world, but we want to get this conversation going. And this Vodafone report felt like a really great jumping off place for this conversation. We actually have a guest that we are planning on interviewing. We're excited about, I think we're interviewing her next month. Who is in California, and she is really focused on this issue, the issue of the missing conversation in the corporate world around perimenopause and menopause for women. And so that will be a really interesting conversation. And I think it'll probably just naturally flow from what we talk about today. But so here are some of the things that were found in this report, some of the statistics. So about the women that they surveyed, and again, I don't have the details on the size of this group that they surveyed or anything. It may be there buried in the details of the report. I'm sure it is. I just haven't had time to go look for that. But they said 62% of the women that they talked to said that menopause affected them at work. 33% of those women, so 1/3 of those women, said that they hid it at work. So they were not talking about it and they were actively trying to hide it. And then 66% of women agreed that there should be support, which interestingly is very close to the 62% of women who said menopause affected them at work. So basically everyone who's affected by it thinks there should be more support for it, which is kind of a no-brainer, I guess. And then 44% were too embarrassed to ask for support in the workplace. And that's really unfortunate. I mean, almost 50% of these women are too embarrassed to even say, I need some help. I need some support. Is there some accommodation that could be made for this? 1 in 6 women will experience the debilitating symptoms that directly affect workplace productivity. So I'm not sure how they figured out what the debilitating symptoms were, but when we go and look at the statistics that are coming up around sleep deprivation, sleep, hot flashes, all of that, the percentages are a lot more than whatever 1 in 6 works out to. That's too much math for me right now.
Well, I would say that debilitating means that the insomnia is so severe that you can't come to work. There are multiple days off. That the brain fog is so severe that productivity is almost impossible. That memory loss. That hot flashes. So, I mean, when I talk about hot flashes with women, I have sort of a spectrum of asking, what's your experience of them? Are you having a couple a day and it's no big deal? You just have to take your sweater off, or are you literally having a full blown hot flash every 10 minutes? And so I remember having one patient who worked in the corporate world, and she would be trying to give presentations, and she would literally be the stress of having to give the presentation made it worse, but literally having a hot flash every 10 to 15 minutes and pouring sweat and turning red. And so not only was it uncomfortable physically for her, but the embarrassment of having this happen in a room full of honestly largely men was really challenging. So that, those are the things, the depression for some women, the anxiety, those would be the debilitating symptoms that, some women are dealing with sort of a memory loss or a brain fog that they can kind of, make extra lists for, and just kind of up their game in terms of organizational strategies. But others are really unable to actually take in information, process it, and then use it in any meaningful way.
Right. So it's really probably about the severity of the symptoms, and not so much that the symptoms are different. It's just the level of severity. So 1 in 6 women will experience debilitating symptoms that directly affect workplace productivity. But then more generally, their research suggested that the most common impact at work was, and all of these kind of came in around the same, so general fatigue, 53%, mood changes, 47%, broken sleep, 46%, temperature fluctuations, 42%, and then increased stress was 40%. So they're all around they're close to that, between 40 and 50% kind of. Those are the most common symptoms. And those are probably, for many women, not debilitating and leading to a direct, obvious loss of productivity. But I would argue they're probably generally reducing productivity across the board.
It's
certainly
a vicious cycle too.
Yeah, exactly.
The more tired you are, the more cranky you are, the more irritable you are, there's, it all ties in together to make you.
So then they said that over 36% of women had to take time off work because of menopause, perimenopause symptoms or menopause symptoms, which I guess the 1 in 6 statistic is really about being able to make a direct correlation with a decreased productivity in a specific task at work. And this is that 36% of women just can't do it at all. And they're out. So they're having to take time off.
That doesn't mean that it has to be for a long period of time. It may be also that, they go through a period of extreme insomnia and they need to take a short period of time off.
Yeah, for sure. And about 50% of women, this is the stat that really stands out for me. It's this research. So about 50% of women are concerned with how perimenopause consequences are affecting their performance, their progression in their career. So whether or not they get promoted, get the raise, get the increased responsibility, and also other coworkers and superiors' perception of them.
Yeah.
So that's the piece that for me is really sad. I mean, I totally get it. I absolutely understand it. And I would feel the same way, I think, if I was still in the corporate world. I mean, I've been out of it for a long time. I will tell you that as far as I can recall, I'd be shocked if I'm wrong on this. There's absolutely no discussion ever of women's hormonal issues in the wellness part, or I guess, of human resources in the law firm that I worked in. Like, I don't think anyone was ever talking about, I'd be surprised. I'm sure they're not talking about it now.
Well,
maybe, but
I think they would have been hard pressed to even bring in stuff around breastfeeding and post-maternal or postnatal care, you know, that kind of integrating women who have babies back into the workforce.
Right.
That would have been a big deal when that sort of became, I don't know, was it ever mandated? It must be mandated that there must be breastfeeding rooms.
Yeah.
And I know this, but I don't, because I have perimenopause brain, but
I think you're right. I mean, that would have been the starting place, but but
it should be given the same, if not more, weight.
Well,
because of the number of
the number of women, first of all, the 1 billion women is pretty convincing, I think. And, this is the same 1 billion women who were breastfeeding, many of us were breastfeeding in that time period. And we have now got, so we made the changes then to properly support and accommodate working women who are also parents in the workforce. And now that same group of women, that 1 billion, we are now perimenopausal, heading into menopause. And it makes sense to us that the same conversation should be happening around what needs to happen to support women at this stage of their hormonal lives. So something that I think we need to recognize, and this was not something that I had actually thought through, and so this report was really helpful for me in this regard, is that everybody goes through hormonal fluctuations, and we need to be aware of the fact that trans and non-binary people also go through hormonal fluctuations, and that these symptoms that we are talking about, and that the experience of perimenopause and menopausal symptoms can affect women, people who identify as women, transgender people, and also non-binary people. And so it's important to just recognize that in the employment context and outside of the employment context. So this is something that we haven't talked a lot about on this podcast, but I thought it was really great that it was included as a part of this report, and it was just really helpful to me to read it. So the great part about this report, I think that we really want to highlight, is the fact that, and listen, we're not suggesting that the report's perfect and that there isn't more stuff to do here. I just think it's a really great starting point. And I think we need to be applauding companies that are even talking about this right now, because this is how we get the ball rolling. But what they do in this report is they talk all about, they provide some education around perimenopause, menopause, what's happening, which is something that Sarah, stuff that Sarah and I are talking about a lot on this podcast, although they're not dealing with the types of emotional and they're not making the connections with stress and burnout and all of that. It's a very kind of matter of fact, but it's still really helpful information, especially for women, but also for men who are reading this report.
Understand what is affecting the dynamic and the way that different people are, how they're working in their environments.
Right. Because most of the recommendations that they make require, as a kind of entry level requirement, that you actually understand. So you can actually talk about and support the women who might be going through this. So the recommendations that they make, they have recommendations for individuals who are struggling, like individual employees, and they talk about joining a support group or reaching out to your employee assistance program to talk to them about what supports might be available, to talk to your HR person, maybe to talk to your manager. But I think the piece that's most interesting to me is what employers and managers can do.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
This is where I think we're hoping that we will reach some of you guys, because many of you who listen to this podcast are in positions of seniority at companies, or you're in an HR role, or you own the company,
manager,
or you're a manager or a supervisor, and you're in a position, given where you are in your career, where you have some seniority, you have the respect of your coworkers, and you are actually in a position to open up a conversation about this. Yeah. So what they say about what an employer can do is they talk about how an employer can ensure that there's a comfortable physical environment for women who are, so that would be things like
a de-stressing room, somewhere where used to, maybe it could be the same room where women go to breastfeed.
Where the billion of us breastfed.
Yeah. Well, not all billion.
No, not 1 billion, but half a billion. I don't know how many, but
maybe there could be a support room if you're feeling, sort of, I'm having a hot flash right now as I'm talking about it. But if you're feeling overwhelmed and having a hot flash, and like you might need to take your shirt off for a minute, that there's a room that feels comfortable where you can go and do that. That's not the bathroom. Right. It's similar to saying to breastfeeding women, you have to go and breastfeed in the bathroom, which was what the thought was beforehand. And now we need to create a safe space, a space where you can go and kind of, change your outfit if you need to, because you're feeling overwhelmed and hot, or if you just need to get away from the phone for a few minutes, or you just need to, just somewhere to decompress for a few minutes, because we've talked about the fact that the perimenopausal body is like sort of hyperreactive to things. So it's hyperreactive to temperature, and it's hyperreactive to emotions and to stress and those sorts of environments. And so it'd be helpful.
There should definitely be a air conditioner and a fan in this space.
Yes, absolutely. Air conditioner and fan. And then, one of the things is control over your environment. So that, I think I wrote about it once on a blog or something about how the women, the battle for the thermostat in an environment where there's a bunch of 20-year-olds and a bunch of 45-year-olds. It's like the 20-year-olds can just put an extra sweater on. Yeah. Right. That's the 45-year-olds have the seniority. You can just put a sweater on.
Yeah. And they do talk about that. And I think like this space, I'm just such a big fan of a space like this in an employment context for everybody.
For everyone.
I feel like men and women and everybody needs a space where they can go to just kind of get away, almost like a timeout room where you can go chill out for a few minutes. And if you want to do some breathing, or you like to meditate during the day, there's a space for you to go, almost like a breakout room. Yeah. The other thing they say is really, helpful about having a space like that is that it provides a safe space for the actual conversation to happen. So where you can actually go talk to other women or your manager or whoever about what's going on and how they can support you. So that's the first thing they talk about that an employer can do, provide a comfortable environment. And then secondly, this space to, a private space. And then they also talked about the importance of having flexibility around breaks. Yeah. Because if you're perimenopausal, menopausal woman, there are so many reasons why you would benefit from additional breaks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us a couple.
What if you have really heavy periods in perimenopause and you literally need to change your tampon or your Diva cup or whatever every 45 minutes? Where, if you only have a scheduled break every 2.5 hours or, whatever that looks like, there should be that understanding that perhaps you need to use the washroom more often. That's one of them.
Yeah. That's a really great example of that.
So that there isn't this feeling like you have to put your hand up to go to the bathroom.
Right. Exactly. Kind of you don't need to draw attention to it. Yeah. And even I think for me, with my experience with hot flashes, changing my environment is actually really important. Yeah. So I have to usually take at least one layer off, but I also need to move, walk around, sometimes go get a glass of water. There are things that I can do to help that pass quicker. Yeah. So I like that. And then they started talking about how to train your managers, which I also think is really important because let's face it, men are still largely the managers, and they are not by their own fault, but this conversation is not even happening with women. No. So why are we expecting it's happening with men? It's not. So the first step is is the education piece. So again, the report itself provides a lot of education, but this idea of actually talking to your entire managerial team, women and men, about this as a real wellness issue amongst your employees and your workforce, and then educating them so that they have some information about what is actually going on physically, hormonally, emotionally, all of that for women in this demographic. And then also when they're advising managers as to how to better support their employees, they're saying that the managers should be actually going to the employees to ask the employees, what do you need? Yeah. How can I support you? Which I think is great because it's so individual. Yeah. The experience in perimenopause and menopause is so unique.
I was thinking about, creating a survey, actually, sort of an anonymous survey that could go out to all the women, to say, you don't have to come forward and tell us what you're experiencing personally, but please let us know how much this is actually affecting your productivity, so that we can take steps to find ways to address it, to just like gather information to start. That's the first place, because you might have one woman over here who's having heavy periods, another one who's having migraines, one woman who's having no symptoms whatsoever and feels perfectly fine, and another who hasn't slept in 3 weeks. Right. And so as an employer, you can't really know how that is impacting their productivity and their confidence in the workplace until you actually get the data. So like get the information from your staff, and then that can open up the conversation about what to do about it.
Yeah, I like that. Then they talk about how they have created a hormonal health support group, which just made my heart sing.
So great.
I thought, what?
It should be in every business.
Oh my gosh. I do so much corporate wellness. I mean, I talk at law firms and accounting firms, and I do, I've spoken to Fortune 50 companies, and I have never heard of anyone who has a hormonal health support group within their company. And I just think that is fantastic. Groundbreaking. Yeah. So, I mean, if you don't have a hormonal health support group, first of all, I'm pretty sure you're not alone. But secondly, like maybe you're the person to actually start that. Yeah. Maybe you're the person to actually start this conversation going, saying like, look, we have support groups for X and Y, but we don't have a support group for this. And, whatever the percentages of our staff is, 50% probably is going through this or will go through this at some point. So this feels like something that we would really all benefit from.
Yeah. And even if you're a person who's an employee rather than a manager, maybe you could start that conversation so that you can then bring the information from your colleagues to the people who actually can make the decisions in the firm around where resources are applied or allocated.
Yeah.
And, asking to bring in speakers, for example, asking to bring in that support.
Yeah.
But if you could gather some people together to talk about it, then you'd have an idea of what you're bringing to the table, because you might feel very alone in your own experience of this, and you will be pleasantly surprised probably to know that there's a whole lot of people who are feeling exactly the same way.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's great advice.
And confidence in perimenopause is, for some women, it is dicey at best because of all the changes. And so I noticed that a lot of women have a drop in confidence, and it doesn't help when your brain's not working right, and you're tired and you're irritable and you feel alone. And so that then translates into the way that you work and the way that you interact with your colleagues and the way that you interact with your managers and other people in your work environment. And so actually sort of opening this conversation with other women who are feeling the same way could be really helpful to help you understand that that many people are feeling this lack of confidence, and sometimes there's more power in a group.
Yeah, I think that's also a really good point. I was just thinking to myself, I mean, just in the number of years that I have spent either in the corporate world or in the corporate wellness world since leaving law, what I have learned is that money talks, and that the best way to get these types of programs going, it's really helpful if you can actually connect it to a specific loss or a specific benefit in terms of the bottom line. And so that's where the lost productivity piece comes in. That's where, employee retention comes in. Yeah. There are a variety of different ways to actually value from a dollar perspective, the value of whatever the initiative is that you're trying to take. But I do think that that's important. And that is, there are different ways to do that, but like, how many sick days do you have that could be prevented? How could you support employees so that they're actually more productive in the hours that they are at work, which then of course increases your revenue and, those types of things. So
and I want to know how many, and I know this statistic exists, but how many women retire early because of perimenopausal symptoms?
Oh, that's a great question.
How many women are actually just sort of tipped over the edge into that early retirement because they're not sleeping? And then just back to that productivity piece, what we've learned a lot, I think, and I'm not in the corporate world, but from what I understand is, companies that are paying attention realize that their employees can actually be just as productive, if not more, sometimes at home if they need to be. And so for perimenopausal women who aren't sleeping, and perimenopausal women who are bleeding a lot, and perimenopausal women who are having migraines or are anxious or are experiencing any of these symptoms, or menopausal women for that matter, to have the flexibility to say, I'm going to work from home today, and have that trust that the work is going to get done and that they don't need to be micromanaged.
Yeah, huge.
Would be a huge step. And I think I hope in the corporate world that there's been more of an understanding that productivity actually increased in some cases in the pandemic because people had that flexibility.
Yeah, no, I think that's maybe one of the silver linings in the pandemic for perimenopausal and menopausal women is that I feel very confident just from the work that I do and the people I've spoken to that we will never go back to what we were before the pandemic in terms of everybody working in offices all the time. So hopefully that will benefit, but that's a really great example of flexibility that you can, if you don't already have it as part of your workplace, you can start talking about how you can increase that flexibility. I think that that's great. We also spend a lot of time in this report. Page 17 was my favorite page. I took lots of notes from that page. They talk about how to support somebody that you care about who's going through this, whether it's a colleague or it's a friend or a partner. And the first thing is to learn and understand what's going on. So learn the symptoms, understand biologically what's happening physically. And then the second thing is to listen and keep the lines of communication open, which is just to let somebody know that you're there and you're happy to talk about it anytime if that's helpful to them. And that you would like to support them. But at the same time, don't push on that. I mean, this is all in the report, which I think is great. Yeah. Like I got to this section, I was like, wow, this is like really well done. Give her free range over the thermostat. That was actually in the report, basically like let her control the temperature. Don't comment if the windows are open. When you walk into a room, don't comment. Geez, it's freezing in here. Sensitivity around this. And this was my favorite. This is a direct quote from the report. Help her build confidence. In our youth-obsessed society, self-confidence can be diminished at menopause, which is kind of what you're just talking about, Sarah, a little bit, right? Like, not only do we feel compromised in terms of our cognitive ability a lot of the times, even though we know now it's temporary, it can feel like it's not temporary, and it can be terrifying to not be able to remember what you were about to say. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I just had something in my head 2 minutes ago and I forgot it.
I know, me too.
I have some great stuff I was going to say. Sarah and I would just sit here and talk, and we don't usually take notes. So I forget half the really brilliant things that I want to share or comments that I have to make
to the world.
So I know, I'm so sorry, you guys, you're really missing out on my brilliant thoughts. No, I mean, I had something I was going to say about what we were just talking about, and it's gone out of my brain. And that is, in this setting, totally okay, because Sarah and I we're actually having the missing conversation about the fact that we can't remember anything. But in the corporate context, that is really tough. Scary. And I've been doing, corporate wellness presentations for the last 2 or 3. I mean, I've been doing them for 10 years, but for the last 2 or 3 years, I've been doing them in the height of perimenopause and into my first year postmenopausal. And I will tell you that there have been a lot of moments where I am in my mind panicking because I cannot remember what the next thing is. I mean, so far it's worked out. Luckily, I'm pretty good at just kind of ad-libbing. And so I can always, and I know that the people who are watching me don't know that I'm having that moment, but it's really uncomfortable for me as somebody who's so used to really being organized with my thoughts and concise and all the rest of it to lose my train of thought like that.
Right.
And I've also had moments where, thank God for Zoom and this Zoom filter. This is the only place I use a filter, by the way, guys. I use a filter on Zoom just because it makes me look less bright red. But when I am doing those presentations, oftentimes I'll catch a look at myself because I always have, like, I'm on a video group with a bunch of other people and I'm bright red.
Yeah.
Because I feel the heat coming on, and that's really disconcerting as well. So that can really affect your confidence. Yeah. And I just loved this idea of helping women in midlife build their confidence and, recognizing that we are youth obsessed and that our confidence does take a hit midlife. Like I've never heard that sentiment expressed in the corporate world before.
I know, it's extraordinary.
Ever.
Extraordinary.
I think it's extraordinary. I don't know who wrote this report, but Vodafone.
Yeah.
We're giving you a round of applause. I don't even know Vodafone except for the research that I did on them before this podcast, but I think it's fantastic.
I just like to point out, just because you've been doing corporate things, I haven't spoken to a group in a long time. Mm-hmm. But in my office, because of what I do, and because we're talking about this all the time, if I'm having a hot flash, I just say it.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, well, look at me, I'm having a hot flash. Or if I forget what I'm going to say, I will just say it.
I'm having a menopausal moment.
Oh my God, I can't remember what I was saying. Mm-hmm. I have no idea. I know it'll come back. Don't worry, we'll get to it. But that is incredibly reassuring.
Well, it normalizes it.
It just normalizes it.
Right,
and so
exactly.
If we can get to a point where if you're standing in front of a group of, your real estate agents, say you're a manager of real estate and you're talking to them and all of a sudden you have a hot flash, you can say, I just need a second, I'm having a hot flash. And if it could be normal, imagine a world where it's
not funny,
normalized.
Everybody is sympathetic and provides you with what you need and supportive. Yeah. And then you just come back and continue where you were going from. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that would be amazing.
Imagine that world.
That I think it is really important. And we definitely are doing this on this podcast. I mean, it's no holds barred here. I mean, we don't really hide very much, but we talk all the time about how this happens to us. And I just shared that. I mean, and on that vein, on the corporate wellness side of things, this is a topic to have a corporate wellness speaker like me come in and talk about. Like Sarah and I would love to come speak to your group.
Oh my God.
We would come to, I mean, we would do it online if you wanted to. I mean, most of my corporate wellness actually for the last couple of years has been online. And I have spoken to groups of hundreds of people online. And then I've spoken to smaller groups and I've run workshops and all the rest in the employment context. This is not currently on my list of corporate wellness topics, but I actually am going to add it. Because it's ridiculous that I don't have it on there as a topic that is an important employment topic to talk about. I send this PDF to people when they ask me what topics I recommend for their group. And it has a list of, a lot of great topics, but there's nothing on there around this. And there should be. So I am hereby pledging.
We'll declare that we'll do it together.
I'm declaring to add it to my corporate wellness topics. And I will say that it will be me and Dr. Sarah Baillie who will do a talk for your group about this issue, because I think it's really, really important.
And we can do talks to employees and talks to managers.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Like either one.
We're just creating a new business here as we talk here. But no, in all seriousness though, we're not the only people who know about this. So there are other people. If you're somewhere else and you want to bring somebody in, start looking for someone who can actually come in and speak to your group on this topic and start recognizing this and putting it up there with all of the other topics like stress management and proper nutrition and work-life balance and exercise and joy and all of the other things that you hopefully get people to come into your business and talk to your group about. So other things that they suggest in terms of how to support somebody that you care about, they say, don't doubt or diminish her experience. I.e., don't tell her it's all in her head, which is awesome advice. And again, pretty great that it's actually written in this public report.
Don't dismiss it as just menopause. Oh, it's just menopause. Oh, it's just, like there's something about the dismissing of women's experience that is pervasive in our culture. And when it comes to the hormonal fluctuations that make bookmark our lives, I guess. It's like, oh, it's just puberty. Oh, it's just PMS. Oh, it's pregnancy hormones. Oh, it's so menopause is the next logical step in that narrative. And that, I think that infuses the whole experience of a woman's trying to be their best self in a corporate environment.
Yeah,
is this dismissal of anything hormonal as less inferior, makes us less strong. I mean, you name it. I mean, everybody that is out there will understand what I'm talking about.
Well, this is why 33% of the women are hiding their symptoms.
Terrified to say
like they do not even want to say it out loud, right? As soon as I say I'm postmenopausal, I'm suddenly pushed into the Crohn bracket, which is a word I cannot get behind. Crohn, Sarah. I know. I want to get behind Crohn, but
maybe we need a new word.
I think we need, well, we like badass bitches, but that's not real badass midlife bitches, but I think we need something less offensive.
Yeah.
Also, bitches is not a good word. It is it's misogynistic. We should not use that. We should be finding something more positive.
Come up with suggestions for us.
Yeah. Oh, if you guys have suggestions for what we should call ourselves in midlife at this stage that is more positive than Crohn, we'd love to hear it.
It's not that Crohn is negative. It's that,
well,
our society has made it negative.
Right. It used to be really positive. I think in some cultures it is very positive.
Very positive.
Yeah.
But
it's
for
not
us,
in North America.
It isn't. So it sort of brings.
No, definitely brings wise me. It's woman. That old woman with the like apple in her hand from what shows
Hansel
that
and Gretel?
No, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty. I don't know. Whoever got eaten, Sleeping Beauty, the poisoned apple.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Right. Like that old kind of witchy, kind of wizened woman. That's kind of,
you don't really necessarily think of her as wise.
Anyway, I think women do not, nobody's admitting out loud well, some people are, and good for you if you are, but a lot of us are not admitting that out loud because we are, concerned with all of these societal, generalized stereotypes that go with a woman who is peri or postmenopausal. So,
and also if you're looking to continue to move up in your career, then if you identify yourself as menopausal, my guess is that there's some association with that and like a slow decline. So you're not actually within the corporate speak. It's hard for me to speak about the corporate world because I've never been in it, but that it doesn't identify you as strong and moving forward and worth investing money in.
It's like the opposite of virility.
Yeah.
Right. So we talk about virility all the time in the context of men. I actually don't know the definition of virility, but I don't think it's gender specific. I think it is a gender neutral term, but it gets applied to men in the corporate world all the time and just generally to men. Virility, like virile, I don't know.
Virile men and
maybe not.
World?
Maybe not.
I know there's another term here.
We can either admit I have no idea what I'm talking about right now, or we can go back and edit this. I vote for me saying I actually don't know what I'm talking about. Let's forget I said that.
That youthful promise and hope and strength and all that.
Well, there's something.
The assumption is that menopause, like on the other side of that, it's like a steady decline.
Right. No, I hear what you're saying, but I also think we have this idea, like for some reason, older men are seen as, there can be in the corporate world, this like real strength associated with being an older man, is experienced and strong and he's built this and he's here where he is. And like women are doing all the same things. They're strong, they're experienced, they've built these things. But for whatever reason, I don't think that the same assumptions are being made about women. In fact, it's the opposite. And I not always, but I think
that especially if the word menopause was associated with that woman.
Yeah,
you could have a woman in that same position, but if you attach the word menopause, or if she speaks to the fact that she's had brain fog and not sleeping and is more stressed out at work because of those things, then that diminishes that all the hard work that it took to get to that place.
Right. Yeah, I hear you. I just had a brain flash that actually has nothing.
I need a sociologist.
I don't think this has anything to do with what you were just talking about, but I was just thinking
that the brain fart from the stuff she forgot. Like
it's actually not. Ago. I don't think I think this is a new brilliant thing that I just came up with. Not brilliant at all, by the way. But I was just thinking how we when we're younger, there's this, oh, she's on her period. like whenever you're cranky or you're not even like whenever, and you're basically standing up for yourself and like just being the equivalent of a male in the situation, you're often, hear these kind of disparaging comments about the fact that, it's all because of our hormones. And then the same thing just repeats or has the risk of repeating, in perimenopause and menopause.
That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay. We are
just more long-winded about it.
Okay, good. Well, there you go. Okay. Back to the list of things you can do to support someone you care about. And I'm not really, we're sharing this with you guys, not because we don't think you know this. We think most of you know this because you're female, because you're listening to this podcast, chances are. We're just sharing it because this is the type of stuff that I think we need to start having the conversation in the workplace so that men start to recognize that these are the things that they need to be doing to support women, if that makes sense. I think I just went around and around there.
But not just men, women in positions of power as well, who may not have.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Who may not have either experienced it themselves, or who did a really good job for themselves of just hiding it because they wanted to.
Or they might just be women who did not experience, have been through menopause, but didn't experience the same severity of symptoms or any symptoms at all, which also happens. So that's a really good point. The next thing they say is emotional symptoms are real. Support her, basically. I have never seen that written anywhere either in a corporate document. So I love that.
Yeah.
And then the last thing, which is also a really valid point, is get the support that you need so that you can take care of yourself and be there for her, which is great because, we do need to recognize that we talk about burnout all the time on this show and how important it is to take care of yourself. It's impossible to help other people if you're struggling significantly yourself. So I just love this report. I would really love to meet the authors of this report,
I know.
have a cup of decaf with them.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Something occurred to me. We've forgotten about the men here who are the partners of the women going through menopause and perimenopause.
This is a good point. So this is not addressed in the report, I don't believe.
Yeah. So there are many men who are coming to work every day and trying to work with perhaps not having slept as well because their partner beside them has been shifting and hot all night. Who have perhaps tried to help their partner manage their own emotional symptoms.
And that didn't go so well?
And that might not.
I'm looking at you like, are you telling your own story here?
No,
I'm
not. No, but I do think that, in the name of not being exclusive here, that when you said emotions are real, and they should be supported. That's of course we're talking about women's hormonal health right now, but also, men's emotions are real too.
No, fair point. I absolutely hear what you're saying. Like this, there are repercussions on men sometimes with this too. We need to support men in their mental health, just like we need to support women in their mental health. I think we're just today talking about the fact that this is an obviously unrepresented area of mental and physical health for women in terms of corporate and employee wellness. And we just wanted to come on and share our very rough thoughts on this. We literally just
random.
Like Sarah sent me the report this morning, right before she got here. I read it, skimmed it, summarized it. So I probably missed some important things in the report. I'm going to go back and read it in more detail. There are all kinds of great references that are cited. So it looks like it's a well researched report. And so I want to read it in more detail, but really it just sparked this conversation between the two of us about how this is something that we have not yet talked about on this podcast. We've spent a lot of time talking about the missing conversation between women on this, but we haven't really talked about the missing conversation with men and with employers about this topic. And so we thought, well, we had an interesting conversation on it. So we thought we'd try to repeat it on this podcast. Not sure how well of the job we've done. Do you feel like we've covered all the things?
I think it's a good starting place.
Yeah. We're going to have more conversations about this going forward. Like I said, we have a guest we have lined up who we're excited to talk about from California, who's kind of focused in on this. I
think that if you can just take this, just like we're starting to think about it, you start to think about it, start to look for areas in your workplace where there could be better support, whether it's because you're asking for it or because you can provide it to your people. And it's basically, this is just our jumping off point. And I think that's, this is all about getting the conversation started. So that's what we're doing. We're having a conversation.
For sure. And I'm just thinking, like, practically speaking, what can you do if you want to get the conversation? If you start the conversation going and you're getting support for it, and now you want some resources. I mean, as we said, we'd be happy to speak to any group about this, but there is absolutely no reason why we can't make a program like WTF available to a group of employees.
Yeah.
So if that's something that you think would be of interest to your group, then you can let us know, and we can, we're happy to call it something else. If WTF is offensive to your corporate organization, we get that. We can tone down the irreverence. We'll tone down the irreverence. I don't know if we can tone down the irreverence, but seriously though, it is a program that's designed to help women who are at that intersection of midlife and hormones and burnout, which happens to almost all women in the corporate context. So anyway, we wanted to start the convo.
Yeah.
Which is,
thanks for joining.
What we do here. We start it. We don't necessarily finish it, but we like to start it. We want to get your wheels turning. Is this something that has ever been discussed in your workplace or your business? And if not, why not? And if not, what steps could you take to just start the ball rolling and start that conversation going? And if you do have this going on in your workplace, we want to hear about that too, because it may be happening and we just don't know about it. But I certainly have never had anyone come back, and anyone that I work with tell me that it's happening in their business. This was
a shock to me. I was thrilled to get it.
Yeah, really, really great. So congratulations, Vodafone, who we, by the way, have zero relationship with.
I barely knew it was a thing.
We are in no way endorsing Vodafone. We don't know anything about Vodafone, except that they put this really kind of feels like revolutionary. Right? That's the word I was going to say, revolutionary report out, where we're just really happy that you have started this, hopefully this movement to equalize employee wellness in this area.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it for us. Thanks, Sarah.
Bye.
Hi there. If today's episode has got you wondering where you are in your own hormonal journey, you'll want to download our perimenopause checklist now at wendymccallum.com/peri checklist. This free checklist is the first step to getting informed and taking back some control over your midlife. Get yours now at wendymccallum.com/peri checklist. That's PERICHECKLIST.